Ever since the formation of the Government of National Unity, which was disbanded in 2013, there's been some sort of strange silence from the opposition.
I'm a part of this flag. I'm a part of Dzamara. I'm a part of whoever is doing something that is meant or earmarked to retrieve Zimbabwe out of this pit of failure. I am a part.
Patson was not happy about what happened. Patson's funeral was used as a political opportunity in a very self-serving way.
Dr. Dzamara Igamba, Dr. Dzamara Ishasha, an intelligent man, a brilliant man, a respectful man, a very honorable man, a unifier, a winner, a fighter, a hero. He was a good man. He was a believer. Dzamara oye! 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 Oye!
Here's Edmund.
I'm usually not sensitive to objections to the things that I say, but I think posting Patson's screenshots requires an intervention, particularly because there are some objective people who have expressed reservations about the use. And this is a voice note that I got from one of my friends.
You shouldn't have done that, my brother. But in your attempt to drive the narrative, Yekuti, Chamisa, and the CCC gang are not as they appear to be, which you might very well be right in saying, But if that's the case, then you need to make that argument in a way. And I think yeah, I think this is not in good taste, Wangu. Maybe delete the tweet. But no, it sort of just struck me as something that shouldn't have happened. And I just wanted to let you know.
So on the backdrop of those objections, I thought it was important to extend an apology. It's not my intention to... It's not my intention to offend anyone. I respect and understand the sensitivities that have been expressed variously, and particularly appreciate that these sensitivities are an expression of a deeply held, a deeply cherished cultural value. All across the full spectrum of our cultural diversity in Zimbabwe, which is that wafa wanaka. And it's true, that wafa wanaka. But while appreciating this sentiment and agreeing with it, I want to respectfully indicate that, and I'm sure that my friends and colleagues and others who've expressed concern also agree that the expression of Wanaka applies to people who would have lived less than decent or adequate lives, but whose misdeeds are spiritually forgiven by the tragedy they are passing on. And it's my considered opinion and judgment that Patson is not in that category. We can't say Anaka because Patson afa. And the reality of it, as inconvenient as it is that he was done wrong, and that wrong can't be knackered or forgotten or swept under the carpet because afa. The anniversary of the passing of a colleague, it's an opportunity to reflect on their legacy, which is why I used it for his remembrance, celebrating his achievements, yes. But my feeling was that we also had to ventilate the tragic moments that he needlessly endured, not in an attempt to despise, but to let his spirit rest in peace, because Patson was not happy about what happened and how he was treated. And I spoke to him. I discussed the issue with him. Now, I want to address at least 5 things in this podcast. Specifically, I want to address the attempts by Nelson, and this is a typical technique by Nelson, to cover up without speaking himself. He'll send someone to say something as a cover-up. In this instance, he sent Makomborero, and I'll be reading Makomborero's tweet. The other thing I want to talk about, the complexities that arise regarding some other messages that I've been waiting to use at the appropriate time by Dr. Alex Magaisa and his attempts to get Nelson's signature. That part of it is not in the DMs, but we'll talk about that. I want to talk about how Patson's funeral was used as a political opportunity in a very self-serving way. And because there have been objections about talking about the dead, I want to talk about living people. I want to talk about 2 living people, 2 spokespersons, and the treatment that they suffered suffered that. And then I also want to talk about Patson's belief in people and de-escalation. So I suppose I'll start off with the attempted cover-up, with the suggestion that Patson was rich and therefore did not require any support. So while Makomborero acted as though he was responding to what I said with the implicit suggestion that the screenshot is false, and he was responding on behalf of Nelson to the effect that Nelson did not have to support Patson in any way because Patson was well-to-do. So this is what Makomborero Haruzivishe, yeah, well, that's an unfortunate one given the circumstances. Haruzivishe, and he says, I have known Patson Dzamara for years. He was an entrepreneur who made decent earnings. He was building 2 houses in one go, had real good cars, including 2 BMWs in his garage, had employees and many dependents. He could take care of himself and others. Stop abusing a dead man's name. So what we're supposed to take from that, well, this guy was living large and was fine. Nelson had no obligation to assist him, but that's simply not true. About a month before Patson died, there's a woman in the United Kingdom who went live on Facebook, and she was quite angry with Patson, and she accused him of ghosting her and not replying to her messages. And she said she had lent him, I can't remember whether it was £100 or 100 US dollars. By this time, Patson was already unwell, and she probably was unaware that the guy was unwell. After Charlton Sodzo, he's prominent on Facebook, went in and says, look, I know the both of you guys, let's take it out of the public sphere and let's resolve it. And eventually, a Zimbabwean lawyer who's in the United States now said, look, give me your details and I'll pay off the money. How I met Patson, Tom, we used to have some friendly banter, but I used to poke him a little bit, and I'll see if I can post some of the screenshots to that along with this podcast. And how I met him was at Pomona, and he was just by the counter ordering. And as I approached the counter to place an order as well, he turned around and he saw my face and he says, Edmund, no, we thought Facebook, you know. And that way he cornered me and he made me pay for my sins. We exchanged numbers and we started to talk. So when he started sending me these requests when we were working together, because we were exchanging files and so on, information, when he was going, he would send me videos to see if they're usable for what we're doing. So when he says, look, can you send me some data? Eventually, and this is where the disclosure of his actual situation came, I said to him, given the kind of work that you're doing for Nelson, surely they should be providing you with the resources for data, fuel, and stuff like that. And he said to me, which means he had tried to get resources but failed. And he pointed out at the time that my tires, actually, they were in such a bad state, he was afraid that he could have an accident.
The podcast continues in the tweet below. Here are some highlights from Edmund, the nation's favorite Mr. Know-It-All.
People don't know that Nelson did not visit Patson when he was sick in hospital. Luke Tamborinyoka, he's the guy who helped Nelson to take over power. What happened to Luke Tamborinyoka? I know exactly what happened to Luke Tamborinyoka. I've seen things like what happened to Kukurigo, you know. He was just allowed to disappear, you know, just left to suffer into oblivion. The DMs that I have, these are specifically regarding Hopewell. They're quite important to understand.
Here's Edmund.
So that was the conversation I had with Patson. And what irritates me is that there's a disconnect between what is said and what is done. And you see this when Alex Magaisa dies. You see this when Patson Dzamara himself dies, and the tributes, they're effusive. You know, you say, oh, surely they must have loved him. But people don't know that Nelson did not visit Patson when he was sick in hospital. That's not how a friend behaves towards another. I'll give you another example of the disconnect between the things that people say and the things that people actually do, which is Luke Tamborinyoka, and he's the guy who helped Nelson to take over power. What happened to Luke Tamborinyoka? I know exactly what happened to Luke Tamborinyoka. I know what happened. And it's not a good thing. And another case that's calling for justice, which everyone who knows about, but they don't want to talk about it because they are hypocrites, is that of Nkululeko. And when it comes to guys like Nkululeko, really just a perfect gentleman, very good guy. You know, he's the kind of guy who'd take the shirt off his back and give it to you. And luckily for Nelson, but perhaps unluckily for his victims, people like Nkululeko share one thing in common, which is just they have this extraordinary humility and decency. And they're a typical, unfortunate example of that Shona saying, which says, they say nothing. And Nkululeko, without getting into much, came from the UK, was diligent in his work, but was treated in an abominable way, completely unacceptable. Again, it's important for me to give these examples because when such wrongs are allowed to happen in any organization that purports to be democratic and is committed to righting the wrongs of the regime and the state, it's a contradiction of monumental proportions when you say that small wrongs such as this can be allowed, but somehow these are the same people who are going to fix and address the bigger wrongs. And when I say these things, it's not to remove anyone from their position, but simply to get them to correct their ways. Jakashata easy. And this culture in Zimbabwe, I say there are two demons in this country, which is number one, vakura vabvunzwe, and number two, atadzangaro, And when we say these things, it's simply to say to the leaders, I am a temperaminator at Made. And it's my right to say that. And if Nelson becomes president, I'll be the guy who'll be telling him. It's also partly because I have direct experience, you see. And I've seen things like what happened to Guleko, he didn't get his dues, actually. He didn't even get any thanks. There wasn't even a tweet to say, hey, Nkululeko, thank you for a great job. We didn't pay you, but we really appreciate. He was just allowed to disappear, just left to suffer into oblivion. And this incident, Patson, has left me conflicted regarding Alex Magaisa. The DMs that I have, these are specifically regarding Hopewell. And I'm not sure now. I'd said I'm going to share these DMs because they're quite important to understand. One detail that I can share, which did not come to me through DMs or private communication, was that Dr. Magaisa actually was trying to get a grant so that he could come back in Zimbabwe for perhaps 2 or 3 years and be fully involved in the politics and to contribute. To do that, he needed a signature. He required Nelson's signature. Nelson refused to give him the signature. Yeah. Now, the guy dies, and all of a sudden, people are effusive in their praise. Oh, Dr. Magaisa. Oh, he was wonderful. Oh, he was excellent. The funeral becomes a political opportunity. But if he was so wonderful, why did you refuse to give him your signature so he could come and assist you full time? Like I said, I bumped into Patson at Pomona. His approach to people was disarming, and he was a guy who believed in people. And there's a post that explained his disposition that he put up on Facebook, where he was referencing Matthew 10:14. He believed in de-escalation. And I'll just read this to close off. This is just a snippet. You can find the full post. It's quite a long post on Facebook. But he said, I have welcomed almost anyone, including those on the other side of the fence politically. Some have actually become family or friends. Despite our diverging views and positions, I believe in the way of love. And politics, or any engagement premised on hatred, belongs to a bygone era. That's what Patson believed, that politics based on hatred belonged to a bygone era. I believe that if Patson was alive today and we had the kind of behavior that we have from cyber thugs, I believe Patson would have condemned it. And when it comes to Patson's funeral, despite Nelson not having visited the guy in hospital, the moment he dies, it becomes a political opportunity, and immediately Nelson says he was poisoned. He says he was poisoned. He didn't even visit the guy in hospital, but he knows that the guy was poisoned. Where's the evidence? There's no evidence that's presented. It's a similar thing with Alex, where the guy dies, you refused to give the guy the signature that he needed to release the funding that could support him while he's in the country. But all of a sudden, the guy dies, and he's suddenly now the best thing since sliced bread. There's a dishonesty there that I believe must be confronted. You can't have a situation where politicians politicians do one thing when someone is alive, and then the person dies and they behave in a manner that's contradictory. And there are people in the society who know exactly what happened, but somehow we're not allowed to talk about it because it's impolite. I'm sorry. If it means I have to cause offense, then so be it. I'm going to tell the truth. And Nelson is not being honest, no matter what he sends Vanamako to say. And I know that's Nelson because that's his modus operandi. He sends trolls. That's Nelson. Nelson Anotuma. That's how he operates. And that's why they call him the Cobra.